Check me out. Yeah.
Well, hey guys, hey, how's it going? Welcome to Mile High Mentors podcast. Super excited to have you here. Baby boomer, Generation Xer, maybe you're Generation Z, perhaps you're a millennial. Welcome. Thank you. This is the Mile High Mentors podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. My name is Connor Doobie, and I'm your host each and every single episode. And by the way, I am a local to Colorado. I was actually born in Fort Collins. So, yeah, appreciate you tuning in. Please, if you're listening to this on Stitcher, on Soundcloud, on Facebook, on iTunes, anywhere you're seeing this, listening to this, I would really appreciate you leaving any feedback that you have for us, because that is how we continue to improve this show. We find guests is based on what you guys are interested in listening into. So again, thanks so much. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Denver Open Media. You can check those guys out at denveropenmedia.org. They are an incredible foundation here in Denver, which provides you the space, the technology tools, the resources to create really, really good content, whether it's television content or what you're listening to the podcast here, or you're doing YouTube content or some really other complex type of content development. Those guys can help you out. We're also brought to you by Active Blogs. And Active Blogs is the go-to experts for B2B content marketing and LinkedIn social selling for companies that sell high dollar and complex sales. It's all business to business, and you can find them at activeblogs.com. Be sure to check them out for those resources. Today's episode of the podcast was with one of my favorite guests so far, and part of that is Ash is just a really genuine, humble guy. He grew up in India and didn't always have all the means and everything necessary, but found his way into some great schools because he's just a stellar, smart, sophisticated guy. It was really an honor to get to talk with him. And so, we get to hear a story about his transition from going from India to here to the US, and is now working in one of the fastest growing IT companies, services companies, and is working to take that right now from $300 million to over $1 billion company. I'm completely confident he's going to do it, and I know he's going to be a massive, massive driving factor of that. And also his story is massively just fascinating, and listening to some of the people he grew up with, and even in his university that he went to in India. Matter of fact, and you'll hear this in the show, there is some pretty powerful now current business leaders that he was engaging with at his college. And so listen into that. One of them is involved with Google, and it's probably going to blow your mind a little bit. So without further ado, please welcome Ash Srivastava, I hope I said that okay, to the Mile High Mentors podcast.
So one of the things that, probably as an intro is worth mentioning that, it's really important for anybody who wants to be a meaningful player in today's economy. You cannot not think global. Mm-hmm. If you do that, then you are automatically putting yourself at a disadvantage. Your competitors are global, your labor is global. At one point of the world, you might have been selling to one guy to another guy in the neighborhood, but now everything is at a level playing field, right? So if you're not operating that environment, then you're at a disadvantage. That's the honest truth. Especially if you want to be something meaningful. If you want to be, like our aspiration is to get $2 billion, global has to be part of the strategy.
Yeah. You guys are at 300 million
Roughly
right now?
300 million.
300 million?
Right. So
what are you guys going to do next year? Are you like really exponentially growing at a rate, or is $1 billion maybe 10 years down the road?
No, I hope not. I mean, that's our, we want to get there. The vision is, and I think ultimately it's more about the philosophy versus just the pure numbers. I mean, numbers is a result of something that you do, right?
Yeah.
But, what we are trying to do is build a company that can be different and that can last, right? That's what we want to do. And so as part of that, what we are doing is we are focused on growing organically. So we are hiring people in the US. We are making expansion plans overseas. We're making investments. We made a major investment I can talk about in India, and then we are also looking at inorganic. We are looking at buying companies. We just made an acquisition this year, so that's part of that. So what I was going to say, on the being global. So one of the things that's really fascinating. There's a study that was done by McKinsey sometime back now. It's probably dated, but the trend's still relevant, I think, is, by the year 2025, most of the industry trends are saying that, the growth driven by what is called the so-called emerging countries, or the BRIC, Brazil, Russia, India, China countries, that will exceed the buying power of the US. So think about that trend for a second.
Really?
The US has a lot of power. There's a lot of, buying power over here. But if by 2025,
that's just right around the corner.
That's right around the corner. If your client base is dramatically shifting to places where the middle class is growing, which is a lot of these developing emerging countries, then if you are a company that wants to grow your business, you cannot not think about those aspects, right?
Yeah. Now, what are people's biggest challenges of going there? You guys have done it successfully, but there's reason. I think most companies would recognize today in 2017 and where we're going with technology in the next couple of years. Right. You have to expand globally, or you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely, yeah.
No matter what. What's the biggest barrier for that for other companies?
No, so let me respond to your first comment, which is we've done it successfully.
Yeah. And first off, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Yeah. And are we going to just go with Ash then?
We can go with Ash. Yeah,
we'll go with Ash. All right. Well, cool. Thanks for officially being on the Mile High Mentors podcast.
Absolutely.
And, just had to plug that in real quick, but please go ahead. I really want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. On that. So let me let me just also before I get to the success, and I think I know that I will humbly say that we've been successful, but we've also learned a lot along the way.
And you've been with the company for
almost 5 years, right?
5 years.
So one of the things that the thing about, I want to put a plug in for Dices also, because that's one of the reasons why we're here talking. The thing that gets me excited every morning getting up is the history of this company, our CEO, his vision, and he's very dynamic, relatively young guy, my age roughly, and he had an opportunity to sell the company and pocket a very sizable sum several years ago, and he chose to build something to last. So that's what this company is about. That's what gets me excited. So everything that we do, whether it's US or international, is to build to last for long term, right? So that brings us to your question about the success factor. And there are a lot of barriers. And, personally, I've made huge amounts of mistakes, and our CEO will say, it's a mistake if you do it twice. If you do it one time only, it's actually a lessons learned opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are a couple of things, when you want to, and this is informal, Connor, so, please jump in, if you want to go in a different tangent. I mean, I'm so passionate about this, I can talk for a very long time. But there's, I think, one, going global is an important imperative for anybody who wants to be meaningful in the world that we are going to exist in the future. Right? Now, how do we get there? I think the first thing that I've learned is that you do have to make a commitment. In order to get $1 of revenue growing, it requires a lot of wherewithal. You can't just do it sort of half committed. You can't say, I'll just dabble in Brazil or I'll dabble in Switzerland. It doesn't work like that.
You have to be all in.
You have to be committed.
Yeah.
And what that means is, as an organization, you have to have the backing of your investors, your leadership team, to make the commitment, to say that, hey, we're gonna. And I think it's better if you're thinking about it. It's better to actually have a plan first. It's better to, rather than try it 50% to dabble it, just make sure that you've done your own analysis, that you're serious about it. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm not ready yet, right? But I'm going to do it when I am completely committed, right? So being committed is really important in my mind. And I've got plenty of examples where unfortunately in some cases we were not 100% there, and we didn't have the underlying structure, and it actually came back and bit us, right, in a big way. And so we said, lessons learned for us. If you do something, we'll do it seriously, we'll do it full force. We're not going to do it half-baked, right? And so we said, as part of a strategy, we'll focus on, markets that we believe in, we'll commit in those. And where it's going to take us a lot of, investment to get there. As an example, China is a great market. We're not in China. The reason why we're not in China is I know it's going to take us a lot of time, effort,
right,
to get into that market. It's a huge market. Canada is another one where every province is different. Think about the laws you have in the US. In Canada, every province has different laws. So in order for you to operate in Canada, you have to have understanding of each of every province, right?
Yeah. No, I want to get deeper into that.
Sure.
Let's go here. Let's step back and just kind of rewind, because we're here to showcase you. And also, I'm curious about you're a young dude, and you're in this awesome position where you're at right now. You're creating a lot of success for yourself, and you're offering incredible mentorship for other people, not only just here in the state of Colorado, but in the tech community out in California. Give us a premise, let's start literally from your childhood. Tell us, where you originally came from and what your transition from childhood into your early 20s. That's really the interesting stuff.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I think that's good enough. So I've been I grew up in India. I was born in a town.
Where in India?
Yeah, in a town called Lucknow, which is about most people know New Delhi, which is the capital, so it's about a half an hour flight from there.
Okay.
I think it was humble beginnings. My parents came from a middle class family. My dad worked for basically the government organization here or there, and so what that taught me was a couple things. One is I never take anything for granted, because when we were growing up, resources were scarce. We didn't have running water every day, right? So my mom, when I was 8 years old, would say, "Here's a bucket, go out, fill it up so we can cook food," right?
Wow.
And look, I
and that was your entire childhood?
And that was, a good part, of my childhood. And, so today, when I turn the tap on, even now, I think about that. Hey, that is not so bad. The water is running. I don't need the bucket. So that's good.
No more bucket, guys.
No more bucket. So I think that's...
And you got this scenery here, which can't beat that.
Yeah.
But is it a big city? Is it very city... Because New Delhi is a pretty big city, right?
Right.
It's a booming... A lot of sky rises and stuff like that.
Now, so this is... I'm going back, more than 25, 30 years ago. So India is a much different place than I was when I'm a childhood. It is like... I go there and I don't recognize, you have the Google logo and the Microsoft. You have it's like Silicon Valley in a lot of big places. Yeah. And what I meant by resources were scarce didn't mean that resources didn't exist. It means that you had to fight for it, right? So, there was the middle class at the time didn't have enough buying power. So, if you were rich, you had everything, and there was this divide. Now the middle class is growing there, so the middle class has a lot of buying power. So it was humble beginnings. That was one. The other thing was, because the resources were scarce, very early, we all had to adapt to being very competitive, because it was hey, if you want to go to a good college, as an example, the one that I went to, there was like 2,500 students enrolled, right? And there were 100,000 people that applied and competed for it. So
for 2,500
for 2,500 positions
in
that college, right?
Wow.
And so it was.
Is that pretty typical for
it's for the top schools, which
Yeah.
I was fortunate to go to one of those, and it was competitive. Meanings like if you wanted to have a shot, the thing was that you have to be good, you have to be hardworking, you have to be intelligent, and then you have to have some amount of luck, to have a shot in that, because the resources were scarce, and if you want to be at a good college, you really have to be. So I think that's where my background came from. It was middle class family, humble beginnings. I was fortunate enough to get some lucky breaks early on. And
what were those lucky breaks?
I think getting into a good school.
You got into one of those 2,500
one of the top schools
seats
over there. So that at that point, and it was I'll take a little bit of credit for it. I got a lucky break, but it was
You're a smart guy.
It was extremely hard working. I was a lot of hard work. I remember there were days. To get into this college, I slept 3 hours a day for like 3 months.
And how old were you at this time?
And that was when I was 18 years old.
Wow.
Now, when I got into the college, it was at that point you felt like, hey, I've checked off the first major milestone in my life, because unless I really, really badly screw this up, I think I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
So college for me, was actually, and I have a very fascinating story about that also. College for me was a great time. It was like, we learned, they were all smart kids. I was in a good school, but at the bell-shaped curve, there was a lot of people on the right side of the curve than where I was sitting, right? So I got to talk to a lot of really bright people. The guy who's the CEO of Google, Sundi Pichai, he went by Sundi, was in the same dormitory as I was, and he was 2 years ahead of me.
Really?
And he was part of our hazing and all that kind of stuff. So it was just like...
Wait, you have a story there, at least, right?
Story. Yeah, I don't know if Sundi would... first of all, I don't know...
Do you guys still know each other?
No, I don't. He will not remember me, for sure. Because,
really?
But the way it worked was, if you're junior...
Mm-hmm.
So the college was IIT, Kharagpur was the name, near Calcutta. And Sundi was 2 years ahead of me in the basically class category, and then we were in the same hostel. So normally the way it went is, your first allegiance was to your hostel, to your dormitory. Everybody bonded, and then beyond that, it was your batch, and your department, like your major that you were in. So if you had somebody who was senior to you, they would normally not remember you, but if you had people junior to you, they always looked up at you, because you were like the more senior person that they would look up and aspire to become like, right? And so I actually, when I moved to Denver, I had a couple guys from my, junior to me a couple of years. They remembered me and I didn't remember them. So they were the ones who actually, I had them over for dinner one time and they were remembered, hey, do you know that Sundi is the CEO of Google? I'm like, so no, he would,
You're like, yeah, we're best friends.
I know. I would love to say that. I remember him, and
he's the current CEO of Google right now. Yeah,
and so I will.
There's some interesting stuff going on over at Google.
Let me tell you this: that let's just put it this way.
Yeah.
That as part of my hazing, which Sundi was very nice, and he was a very professional, and he was very charismatic. Intelligent person. I had a lot of interaction with him during the time, and we all looked up at him because he was just a very intelligent guy.
Yeah. And
he's done some amazing things. He's gone. He's gone. He's the CEO of one of the top companies in the world, right? So,
yeah.
It was that kind of experience. Going to college. College was a great time, and then, then getting my next break was getting an opportunity with. A multinational company that was starting to look at Y2K work overseas. So right out of college, I worked with
Y2K.
The Y2K bug.
Oh man!
I've got a lot of. I joke around that the work that I did created a lot of opportunity for people to fix.
Yeah.
So that was basically
What was that like? What was the formatting of that? Hey, Y2K is coming. We need technologies for this? Like, what was that conversation
at the time, there was I came to the US around 97, right, roughly 20 years ago, and that was the time when Y2K was at the peak, right?
Yeah, and this was a 4-year college you went to.
Yeah, so I went to a 4-year college. That college my degree was in aerospace engineering.
Okay.
There was a lot of software involved in that, so my choice at the time was to go work for the government or go do what everybody else was doing, was go to a software company and come to the US. So I chose the same path. And
you came straight to. Did you go to California?
I went to California.
Okay.
For a couple year and a half roughly, and then and from there I just ended up over here. So Y2K was there was a lot of demand. People were looking for a lot of people to just come and just by brute force fix the issues because people were essentially paranoid.
Security, right? Like cybersecurity and.
Well, it was just this. I think there was a lot of good work that went into it, but I think to some extent there was also this almost paranoia that planes would fall from the sky.
Yeah.
And that because the digit would change, right? And it didn't happen. And actually, I was one of the people who actually flew on December 31st, 1999, just to make a point that planes will not fall out of the sky.
That's badass.
Yeah, so it was good. We went to Vegas. I didn't have a room with a couple buddies. And
so you're popping champagne on the plane.
Yeah, so if it goes down, it's because of the work that I did.
The dude next to you is sweating. He's nervous.
So I think that's how I got here.
Yeah.
So those are some breaks along the way, getting to a good college, getting to a multinational company, coming to California, moving to Colorado, building a network here, getting to DICES. It's just one good thing after another.
Yeah. How'd you get involved with? So I'm sorry. So California, you came to a tech company to begin with. Is that tech company still around?
Oh yeah, it's one of the largest Indian technology companies by the name TCS.
Okay.
And so it was it's still.
Do they white label that as something else?
No, they're a very big company. They got hundreds of thousands of people around the world.
So because it was an Indian-based tech company,
right?
They're bringing students from your university and.
Yeah. So what they did was they would basically hire talent from engineering schools. And then they would train them, and then they would, after training for 3 to 4 months, they would put them onto client projects, consulting work, and so that's how we all got started. Yeah.
Do you feel like college was your kind of way into the States and into your education that you have now, or was it more street smarts? Was it more actually working with companies? Do you feel like you would have kind of been where you were today without college?
Absolutely not. There's just no way. My fundamental belief, maybe I'm a little bit too biased, that it's really important to have a good foundation of education. And for me, an undergraduate degree kind of establishes that. And then when I came to Denver, I also went and got an MBA at the Daniels Evening Program. And so
where's that at?
DU, right?
Oh, DU. Okay, gotcha.
So the school there is Daniels College of Business, right? So, I think what college at an undergraduate level does is just give you a really good foundation. It's not, from my perspective, it's not like you don't really get to be an expert in something, but you develop some really good skills. Well-rounded thinking. You because especially if you are going to like in a hostel kind of environment, you develop good social skills. If you are introverted growing up, and now you're exposed to many people from different facets of life, then you develop social skills and you develop a nice foundation. MBA for me was just the next level where I wanted to go from purely a technical background to more business to business management. Now, I would say that while there isn't a direct correlation, like DICES didn't hire me because I had an MBA, but if I didn't have that business acumen that I developed, at Daniels College of Business, then I think those are the things that you have to do along the way, right, in order to build a well-rounded portfolio. And another one that really played important in my life, which I actually think I shared with you over the phone, was mentorship.
Yeah.
Right? the higher you get in an organization, the more mentoring you need. It's like, some people don't really grasp that concept,
At some point, they feel like they get to a certain level, they don't need those.
Right. Actually, so I think the people who are, in those positions probably recognize that, because, most people will get to that by being open-minded and humble about, their own selves, right, and self-awareness.
Yeah.
But I think, as an outsider, one might think that, hey, just because you're the CEO, you know it all, and the reality is actually the opposite. You need the most, so I was fortunate, in that I had mentoring from people in my company, from within Dices, from, somebody that I keep relationship with, I mentioned earlier, and it's just, that mentoring. So education, you gotta have the foundation, hard work, luck, you want that.
Luck.
Right. And then, then you have, you get a good education, and you're, you get good mentoring. And I also think that part of it is also, I know we are going off the international topic, but but this is important. I think also a lot of this is also, I think human beings are capable of amazing things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just have to be pushed to your limits, right, to realize what you're capable of. I get complacent in my day-to-day, right? The last couple of days that I've gone through some of the challenges in my international stuff, I got pushed to the limit, and I was like, man, I feel challenged. I feel, I'm alive again, right?
Yeah.
Because I think those are things that, so for people, who are maybe wanting tips on how to grow, how to do well in career and life, I think it's really important to just test yourself and your abilities, and you would be amazed of how much you're capable of, right? So yeah, I think we can talk about international a little bit more. If you think that's, there is.
Let's talk mentorship, because that's interesting, and just for timeline's sake. So you worked with that software company in California. Did you transition straight from there to Dices, or did you have some intermediary?
No, I'd worked for another company, another tech company, called CompuWare. Mm-hmm. That's when I switched from technical into sales.
Mm-hmm. Were you all good there? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I went from technical into sales. That was my first break, and the reason why I moved into sales, I felt like at the time, and this goes back almost 15, 16 years now, I felt like, in any job, you have to convince people, right? Whether
any job,
you have to convince people, right? And convincing is.
I think what you just said right there is massively undervalued.
Right. Yeah. I was, it was my thinking. I don't know right or wrong at the time. I was like, I think, if I want to be, CEO someday, I probably have to go convince investors, right? So, or if I am, managing a large team, I'm sure I have to go convince them of what I'm trying to accomplish and the direction I'm trying to take, them on, right? So that was my thinking, and I think I was lucky that my thinking, looking back, was correct. And I think, so that's why I got into sales, not because I just wanted to be. I think sales is a very valuable career. It is very rewarding. It's very rich. If you want to make tons of money, there's nothing like sales, right? And it's also very black and white. You either make it or you don't, and whatever you make is a result of your own effort. There's no other career that is as black and white as sales, right?
Yeah, really. So, it's interesting you say that. I literally just posted something on Instagram today that showed stats of the top 100 billionaires in the world, and it was something like 40% were all working a sales job.
Right. Yeah.
At some point, they're all either sales or monetary management of some sort.
Yeah. So that was, that was my change into sales, as a foundation to what I was thinking could be a stepping stone and build some more skills. And then the MBA, factored into opening my mind a little bit more. And then it was just, I always found that most of my career progression has happened because I wasn't, there's a difference between trying to, maneuver your way towards your next level, mm-hmm. right? and and that may not be the healthiest way to go about it. Versus you saying, hey, I am just going to put my head down and do the right thing every single time and help people along the way. That was one of the probably the biggest mentoring gifts that I got from my current mentor about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. His tip was, Ash, you go from where you're at to your next level because people around you believe in you and they believe in the benefit that you are giving to them. So if you can commit yourself to doing the right thing and helping them be successful, you will find that that's the most selfish thing you can do because it's actually going to promote you. Right?
Yeah. And how do you do that? How do you create that alignment?
Well, I think it's just it is just.
How have you done it?
Right. It's it's just it is just having a grounded view on things and there's no question of how I've done it. I've just had that attitude. Every day I come into work. Is that I have colleagues at my level. And I just, if I can help them in any way, whether it's if I know a client that's looking for work, pointing them in that direction, and it's just, I think it's just really just, I wish there was a better way to put this, but it's just putting your head down and doing your job and helping others succeed. And it's an attitude. It's not a formula. I hope I'm making sense there.
You are.
It's an attitude. It's just and I think that. It's also a company culture, right? Mm-hmm. So how do you do that as a leader is you can create that culture and you can absolutely not tolerate the reverse of that. And if you say, as a leader, if you see that an organization has, conflict or backstabbing or, somebody's selfish interest being promoted over the overall cause, that's when you have to step in and say, you know what, I do not accept this, right? And so you have to create that cultural alignment too. But yeah, I think so that was the education, the move into business, the MBA.
Who's your mentor that really sparked that growth, your personal growth? And it seems like this organization was the one you always refer back to,
right?
And you also have a very close relationship with the CEO here at Dices.
Yeah.
Was he the person, or was there someone else outside the organization? Do you have a couple different mentors that you interact with on a regular basis?
Absolutely. I got actually 3 to 4 in particular. One is, it's not confidential, and I can name companies. The CTO of Liberty Global, mm-hmm. Balan Nair, for the last 10 years has been a mentor.
Yeah. Where's he located?
He's actually in Denver. His office is downtown.
Oh, okay.
So I meet him probably once a quarter, maybe once every 6 months. But that's a relationship that's been built over 10 years, and so my relationship with him now is that when I am at a point of making a critical decision, and I have I want to bounce something off, right? Then I'll call him, and if he's in a board meeting, sometimes he'll just step out and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Or I'll text him, right? So it's it's evolved at that level. My former boss, from the past, at Cyber, I keep in touch with him, and he's been a good sounding board. And, mm-hmm. and I think that's from a mentoring perspective. What you really need is a sounding board. You need somebody to just talk in a neutral territory, right?
Yeah.
Validate ideas.
Who will be blunt with you.
Blunt with you, right?
Because if I wanted anything from a mentor, I want blunt feedback, because that's how I feel I am. It's very straightforward.
Yeah, and so I think those 2 individuals in particular, and then Mafu is our CEO. So the thing with him is that he's a very accomplished, mm-hmm. CEO. And he's been recognized in the Ernst & Young's youngest entrepreneurs. He's just very accomplished, mm-hmm. right?
How old is he?
And I believe he's just turned 46.
Oh,
so I'm 44, he's 46. We're about the same. And he's actually originally from Bangladesh, right? So his story is similar to mine, where his mom sent him to the U.S. with 1 semester tuition. Said, "Look, buddy, 2 sons. This is all I got." He and his brother. You guys go to the U.S. and hey, if you can make it, great. If not, I'll still have you back. So they went out. So Mahfouz is a very intelligent, very charismatic, and very humble guy, right? Yeah. And so with him also, I have that relationship where, it's just bouncing ideas off and having him give me a different perspective. Even last night we were working on some stuff, on a deal, and he was like, I should think about that. So one of the things about good mentors, which I also try to do, is, and Balan is very good at this, is, rather than tell somebody what to do, the important thing is you ask them what they think you should do, right? And then let them arrive at that conclusion, because there's no right or wrong way of doing something. Everybody has a different way. Mm-hmm. But if you can help the person think through, I think it depends on the level that person is at right now. So I think what you find is, if you're just starting out of, in your career journey, right? You do need some and we actually have a program called the Fast Track program, where we are promoting, folks from fresh out of colleges. So I think
here locally,
nationally, right around. Do you
want to talk about that really quick?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we have a program where we hire, and we've got a corporate team that essentially builds relationship with universities, mm-hmm. and then during graduation times we go higher from there, and then essentially we put them in a training program for 4 or 5 months, and then we teach them the DICE's way. We teach them not the technical skills,
the culture,
the processes, and also the client culture that they would be on, and then we deploy them at the client locations, as salespeople. That's the program that we
Brazil.
Started. Yeah, Brazil.
I'll go back to college just to get.
Yeah, I know we haven't implemented that in Brazil yet. It's just been a US based program. But I'm looking.
Julius, you want to go to Brazil?
I know, of course. Brazil is. And I think I'm looking at doing some things internationally that are also, just going off on a tangent here, is part of how you create a company culture.
Yeah.
In an overseas location. One of the ways to do that is to send your own people who have been immersed in that culture, rather than, you can hire local there and train them, or you can send. So there's different ways to do that. So I'm starting to do that a lot more than I had in the past. So the Fast Track program is the US-based program to develop sales talent. Mm-hmm. And
so it's specifically sales talent.
It is. We're starting this off as a sales talent. We might look at expanding to
good sales talent's hard to come by.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that we find about good sales talent is that it's just you can teach people skills, but very difficult to teach people attitude. Right? Attitude is something that you have it, and it can be forced into you, but you gotta have it as part of your DNA.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think the root of that is more so self-awareness?
Yeah, it's self-awareness. It's the environment, that you maybe grew up in. It's mm-hmm. It could be a number of things.
I think that's a massive factor.
Right.
Environment, yeah.
Yeah. So that's a program that we are trying to, it's in early stages. We've tried mm-hmm. it for 2 years now. But for long term, we feel that for us to create good sales talent, we need to have an internal in-house, program that drives that. And so, what we are finding with that, that basically group, that you need to have a little bit more structured way of mentoring, right? Mm-hmm. Bringing it back to mentoring, because if somebody who doesn't have experience, you can't just start with a very open-ended, what do you think you should do? Because they'll be like, I don't know, So you have to have a little bit more structured approach to that. But as you go further up in your career, mentoring becomes more of a sounding board. It's more helping the person arrive at the conclusion, and that's what I've been with Nafuz or Balan or Bill, all these individuals have been really good at, what do you think, man? Let's walk through this together. And so, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
So, and I want to get this out. We're going to have to do a second part 2 podcast, because we didn't even touch like a fraction of some of the stuff that we were initially chatting on, but talk about a little bit, how would someone know that, what is the mentorship you're offering? Because you are very actively involved as a mentor. What's some of the stuff you're working on? What are the programs and everything? Yeah. And this is outside of DICE's, right, what DICE's is doing, right?
Yeah, and I wouldn't call it, outside of DICE's. I think, my opinion is that, when you are a member of the community or an executive, you owe this because the reason why you got to a certain place is because of the benefits that you got. So you gotta, you have to give back to the community also, right? And so, what I do is I'm involved through Thai Rocky, which is a technology for entrepreneurs organization. It's a Silicon Valley based organization. they have there's a great organization. They have a charter member program over here, and Bhavnesh, who's the CEO of Creation Tech, that's a $600 million company. CEO that is based in Denver is the president of that networking organization. So
get her on the show.
So that would be a good person for you. I'm happy to make the introduction. And so he, by the way, is doing some really innovative things, on fostering innovation and technology in Colorado, right?
Yeah.
And so, what I do, it's not like, I am working with people who need help where I can make a difference. And I have a full-time job that keeps me, more than a full-time job that keeps me busy. So I have to be very selective about where I can make the most impact. And there are a few individuals, through Thai that reach out to me help, whether it's a business idea or, and a lot of people will reach out to me for two reasons. One is they don't have the business experience that I have, so they might have a great idea and they want to bounce it, how to take it to market. That's one. And the other is, a lot of people will just say, I've never sold before, and so I'm a startup guy, and I know I've got this great idea, but I don't know how to sell. What do you think I should do? Should I go hire a sales team? Should I go through a channel? So
you're providing the guidance, consulting.
And it's just informal. I meet them after hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I actually have a friend, of mine who every now and then we'll meet on a weekend, and he makes some good food for me, and I give him some free advice.
Nice.
So it's about.
Is it good food at least?
It's really good food, and I hope the advice is just as good. But you'd have to ask him.
Now, do you like Indian food? Like, are you a fan of Indian food?
Yeah.
Is there any actual good, culturally good Indian food in Denver? Because the only place I've really had is Little India. And I don't know if that's good or not. I don't have any context to go off of. And I love Indian food. It's probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. The Colorado has come a long way, man. Because when I moved here,
it's not like New York.
20 years ago, it was like the Indian food place was my home. There was no other. But now you have lots of places, and the one that I like the most is on Arapaho. It's called Bawarchi.
Bawarchi.
Cool. It translates. It's a Persian / Urdu word which means cook, in English, right? And actually, going back to my CEO and his brother Maruf, they are both from Bangladesh. We all love Indian food, so a lot of our DICE's strategy sessions end up being in a hole in the wall in DC, which serves the best Indian Pakistani food, cash only.
Yeah.
so we, when we have to solve some really big problems, we go there and sit down and we just solve them, right?
That's awesome. So two quick things, and we have to go try because I love Indian food. Two things. One, what's the next thing for you? What's your next kind of milestone that you're working towards? And then how can people get in contact with you if what you said today really interested them in reaching out?
Yeah. My next thing right now is I want my company where I'm committed to be at a place where all of us, is my CEO, my colleagues, we feel like in the next 2 to 3 years we have really built an awesome company. And I think if we do that, I'll have plenty of rewards, financially, career-wise, whatever. Someday, I would hope that I get to a place whether it's DICE's or ideally DICE's, or maybe another company where I end up being CEO of the company and I can bring all these things together. And in terms of getting in touch with me, people can write me an email. That's probably the best way to do that. It's one thing I learned in sales was common courtesy. When people reach out to me, I always respond. You never get, and that's actually one of my CEO's traits also. You write to him, he will always. The answer might be no, but you will at least get a response. Wow. I don't get it when you write to people and they don't respond. It's like it's common courtesy, right? So,
yeah. Well, I think as a salesperson too, recognizing that, because I feel the same way. If anyone reaches out, even if they have a terrible approach, at least giving them some sort of response.
Right.
So that's great that you guys have that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our core values are, respect for the individual is one of the core values, and you have to respond, if they ask you something, right? So But yeah, if people want help, for me, it's about being selective where I can actually help somebody elevate themselves. Right?
Yeah.
I may not be the best fit for everybody. I may not have skills. I may not. Part of it is also chemistry, right? You have to have the right personal chemistry to be able to work with somebody. And then this is all. Any mentoring that I do, it's going to be like, hey, after 6, early morning, weekend. So, there has to be a commitment, right? Because I have 2 kids, and they're like 8 and 5, and any free time goes there. So it really is important that if I'm spending any time, I can actually make an impact. So I'll work with probably 2 or 3 people at a given time, meet them once a month, kind of thing.
Yeah. I think that wraps it up right there, Ash.
All
Thank
right,
you so much. This has been
awesome.
one of my favorites so far. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Be sure to check us out on SoundCloud and on Instagram for behind the scenes content. We'll chat with you next time.